Okay. Hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing well out there. Just as a reminder, this channel is for educational purposes only before we get started. So, welcome and happy weekend to all of you. Happy Saturday or Sunday or whatever day of the week it may be where you're listening. And I want to welcome you back to Forever Conscious Research Channel. If I didn't already say that, I may have. See Conscious Souls in the chat. Lawrence, Joshua, Hattie, Kyla, OMC. Hello, everybody. JJ. Hope you're all doing well out there and everyone else who's listening tonight. Well, let me just kind of give you a warning in advance. This is a rough one. And we're going to be going over the near-death experience of Kat Dunkle. That's how it's pronounced. And she has had an absolute monster, vile, sickening, twisted life script. It's one of the worst ones I've gone over in a while, and you'll see. But what's interesting is what kind of transpires when she has her NDE, or NDEs, I should say, and comes back. Ends up, she's roughing it out, deals with tremendous trauma and suffering every step of the way leading up to it. And for many years, mind you. And then has her NDE, and God, quote unquote, says, bring people to me. It's the Matrix marketing department. And what's even crazier is that, her life turns better financially too. And you know what? She freaking deserves it. All right. This poor woman who's been through absolute hell. But you're going to see the functionality of the Matrix, right? Up front and center. The Matrix marketing department is just screaming all over this one. And we're going to be here for a while tonight, so buckle in. We'll probably be here for at least 2.5 hours. So I hope you get something from this one. And if you do, please consider sharing it and hitting the like button so we can get this information out to more people. So let's get to it. Here we go. Oh, it's muted.
Insight. I'm Lorelei Drock, and today our guest, we welcome Kat Dunkle. She's a near-death experiencer and author of the book, Is It Safe to Die? About her transformation. Kat is also the founder of Customer Research Incorp, an internationally recognized marketing and research corporation. We're so happy to have you with us today, Kat. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for letting me come share. I always enjoy this. So
I am so happy to have you, and I know that I saw that you have, amazing responses to your book and that it's really transforming lives. So I just really wanted to talk with you. Can you tell us a little bit about what led up to your near-death experience?
Yes, well, I started off like a lot of us do. Well, maybe not, but in a home that was pretty much dysfunctional. My parents both drank very heavily. They weren't happy in their marriage, and we weren't allowed to do things that normal kids get to do. We couldn't talk to our father because my mom said he worked so hard and he needed to rest. And anyway, we couldn't chew our food too loud. We couldn't have friends over. Anything that would bother him was just forbidden. So that kind of dysfunctional family where we had...
It was forbidden. I'm just going to warn you. There's a lot to say on this one. Some of you may not like it. Some of you will, but we're going to break down the hell out of this one. So, suffering right out the gate.
Too loud. We couldn't have friends over. Anything that would bother him was just forbidden. So that kind of dysfunctional family where we had nothing. And then we were transferred all over the United States with my dad's job. And I don't know if you've ever had to go into a new school, but walking into a classroom, you're a little kid and you don't know anybody and they're all staring at you is a horrible feeling. And then the curriculum would be different. Every 2 years, I'd go into a school, they would be studying something that I didn't have a clue what it was all about. And many times they just say, attend class and we'll pass you on to the next grade. So most of my education was self-taught and things that I could just pick up on my own. So life was just miserable, very happy. As a child, I pretty much believed in God. I think most kids do. Whether you're just taught that way through society. And so I kind of did believe in God, but...
So we have the conditioning process already primed and pumped, ready to go.
And in my teen years, I started becoming rebellious, which a lot of teenagers do just on normal circumstances, which you're in a dysfunctional family, it seems to be more prevalent. And so I was the wild child and did a lot of things I probably shouldn't do. And it was like, I just, at that time, started doubting, did God really exist? Then I had a dear friend that was in a car wreck and died. And that was the first time I'd ever been to a funeral or had seen anybody that I really know die. And I looked down at him in the coffin and it was just such a shock. I thought, he's not really there. He's just a plastic doll. It's not really Stephen. And then I started wondering about what happens to me when I die. And I started questioning. I went to every church I could even imagine. I went to anything that had anything to do with the afterlife. Nobody could say anything that actually resonated with me or that I could believe in.
Well, that's because it's set up that way, right? I mean, this nut house is set up in a way where everything is going to be confusing, inverted, wacky, crazy, everything. You think of the word and apply it to this matrix and it'll deliver, because that's what it is. It's meant to confuse us. It's not designed to get us towards the right answer or toward it does not want to be questioned. That's its objective. Hey, PKSB, good to see you, my friend.
And so I just stopped believing in God. I didn't go to church. I didn't have any desire to learn about God. So that was pretty much how I lived. And then I had jumped into a really bad marriage by the time I was 17. And by the time I was 20, I had two small little boys and was so miserable. I didn't love my husband at all. It was he was drunk all the time, abusive. So one night I walked out, we were in Kansas City at the time, and I looked at this beautiful starry sky and I thought, has to be something up there. And so I cried out, I said, God, if you're really there, if you just give me 1 year to know what it's like to feel love and to be able to love somebody else, because I had never, ever felt that in my life.
So what do we have right here? Ask and you shall receive. This is the matrix. The worst thing you can do is cry out to the matrix and ask it for help, because it's going to provide something, whether it's a near-death experience or not, that's a whole nother story, right? But it's going to provide something in your life that is going to deliver and make you more convinced that it's authentic and that the illusion is real and that you're going to validate it through the request and belief system. This is how the system works.
Well, picked up my boys one day and got an old beat up car and drove from Kansas City to Seattle, Washington, and ended up in government housing, which were just units made from World War II that were little shacks, but it was our own. And I was happy to be free. Boys and I didn't have furniture. We didn't have really food to eat. So we would lay in our sleeping bags on the floor, and our gas heater that heated our unit had a little pilot light, and we would lay down there and pretend that we were camping. And boys just absolutely loved that. And they loved running through the house playing games because they couldn't break anything. And we go to the library and go feed the ducks, and we were happy. I got a good job, and for women back in the 60s, that was not, we were not paid well. It doesn't matter if we were the head of a household. It was the men that got the jobs with the money. And so although I worked really hard and I had a really beautiful grandma type lady to watch the boys, the money just wasn't there. So we still lived in really severe poverty. But again, like I said, I was free and I was happy. So that was good.
Living in severe poverty. So, think about all of the suffering boxes being checked off along the way. It's incredible. And trust me, it gets worse.
Well, then a lady that I worked with told me one day, she came in and she said, I met the man you're going to marry. I told him all about you, and you're going to marry this man. And I was upset. I said, I don't want to have anything to do with men. Trust me, I'm happy now. I don't want anything to do with that. Well, that night, this man called. His name was Don, and he just had the most pleasant, wonderful voice, and we talked, and we went out the next night, and the next night, and on the 27th day, we were sitting in a restaurant, and a man that Don worked with came stumbling in, so drunk he couldn't even stand up, and he came over and leaned over the table, and he said, you two belong to each other. You need to get married, and what would it take for you to get married? And Don, listen, this man had owned his own home. He owned a really nice car. He had a really good job. He loved my sons. He was so handsome. He was just breathtakingly handsome.
Sounds like a Matrix trap to me. I don't know about you guys.
I had no idea what he would ever see in me. But he said, if I had $200, we'd go to Reno and get married tonight. And I went, oh my God.
How romantic.
My heart absolutely stopped. I was terrified because I had never felt love or loved anybody. And here he was. I loved him more than life itself. And it was scary. And apparently he must have liked me too, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't mean to be sarcastic with Kat. Look, poor Kat's been through hell, and this is just a warm-up phase. So, Kat, if you ever are listening to this, my heart goes out to you, sister, and, I apologize. Probably shouldn't have said that.
Bottom line, we drove off to Reno that night and got 2 traffic tickets before we got out of the state, and got married 28 days exactly. So it was in February. It was 28 days in February. Our marriage for the first year was so incredible. I would open a closet, and there would be china and crystal that he got when he was in the Navy, and beautiful things that I just never could afford or ever thought I would ever have. And this wonderful home and this man that I loved, and my sons were happy, had a daddy. They were so excited. And so life was so good. Well, on our first anniversary, we went out to dinner, and he had bought a tavern in the meantime. He was in real estate, but in this tavern I was not real happy about because of my what had happened to me with alcohol. I just was opposed to it, but it was his dream to own his own business and be his own boss, and so he had bought this tavern. Well, after our anniversary dinner, he said, "Do you mind if we just stop by the tavern just to see how things are going?" Well, we did, and I was sitting back in the corner, and this barmaid was hanging all over Don and flipping her hair at him and obviously just flirting with him. And it's like, men don't sometimes see this, or maybe they do, but they kind of like it. I don't know what was going on in his mind, but it was so obvious, and everybody was congratulating Dawn, and I sat there and I just, got a little angrier, and pretty soon, she went up and he was fixing her necklace, and I just lost it, and I got up and just ran out of the tavern down the street. It's pouring down rain. And this man stopped. He said, "Hey, lady, you need help, and you want to ride?" And I said, "Sure." And I hopped in the car with a total stranger and drove around. I'm crying. And pretty soon I stopped crying. And he said, "Do you want to go home now?" And I said, "Yes." And he took me home. I said, "I think the man had to be an angel." Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the equalizer, right? It's like just think what she's dealt with so far. Then she finds her dreamboat of a man, gets married, ends up seeing him act a way that's inappropriate, or at least, not kind or nice or caring about the one you love, ends up getting picked up by a stranger, and that individual is the equalizer. They're the ones who's there to, so, we can call it, quote unquote, an angel. I don't like calling it an angel, but that's what it's commonly referred to. It could be, it's a matrix entity picking her up, taking care of her in her time of need, because she may have reached a point of, like a breaking point. And that's when these things tend to occur, at the breaking point. And we're going to see breaking points with Kat as we move along. So, make of it what you will. But how convenient, again, there's always someone there in these pinnacle moments, ready and waiting to neutralize the situation.
So anyway, Dawn was just furious with me, and we had our first really big fight. And it was exactly 1 year, just like I had propositioned with God back in Kansas City. Just give me 1 year.
Happy anniversary, right? I mean, this is such a sick system. She's saying, not me, she's saying exactly 1 year. God, give me 1 year. Walks in with this guy, and it's exactly 1 year later. And
exactly 1 year, just like I had propositioned with God back in Kansas City. Just give me 1 year of happiness, of knowing and loving somebody. Well, this had actually been 1 year to the very day. And so after that, Dawn and I started kind of picking at each other, bickering. The tavern was not doing well. So financially, we started to hurt, and, the fighting escalated, and maybe the boys might irritate him or whatever. It was just not good at all. And anyway, on it was, as things continued just to disintegrate in our marriage, I thought back to that day in Kansas City, but not really, because I didn't really believe in God. Well, only worked one night a week at the tavern, and it was a promotional thing that we had. And so that was April 6th, and I kissed the boys goodbye and headed there to go to work. And when I walked in the door, Dawn was leaning over the counter, just talking intently. And I couldn't figure out why, because it was so busy. Why is it even working? Who is he talking to? And he hung up the phone, and he came and grabbed me by the arm and was pulling me out the door. And he said these words that just didn't resonate with me, that my son Mark had been hit by a car. So we got to the hospital, and we got there just as the ambulance pulled up, and they pulled Marky out of the ambulance, and he was so still and quiet. But I knew he would be okay. I just knew that. So we went into the hospital, and the doctor came out, how did this happen? How did this happen? And I said, I don't know how this happened. He was with a babysitter, so the doctor left, and we were sat there hour after excruciating hour. And they came out and said, you better call a priest. And I said, I don't want to call a priest. I don't know a priest anyway. And just fix my son. I don't want a priest in there bothering them. But pretty soon the priest came and went into the room, and I knew what that meant, but I just no. And So time went by and through the night, and I walked down the hallway and was looking out the window at the lights coming on in houses and people waking up to a new day and thinking, how could this possibly be? How could they be, things be normal to these people, cars driving down the street? And
that's how it feels. Anyone who's dealing or has been through a loved one or started to lose a loved one, and you kind of, whether you know it or not, there's something to be said about that feeling that Kat just mentioned, where it's like you look outside the window of the hospital or outside the window of your home or something, and you look and you say exactly what she said. It's like, how does the world continue to function? How does everything continue when, my loved one is sitting here dying? It's an emotional roller coaster and dumpster fire while we're here, right? And just, even though Kat kind of explained everything that's happened up till this point, it's like, it's the pile-on effect, right? Pile on, pile on, pile on. I don't know exactly what age she was at this point, but she has been through absolute hell. Absolute hell. And yet, you'll see what happens. It's just horrible, horrible. So let's continue.
Dawn was standing there with me, and I heard footsteps coming down the hall, and I kind of knew what they were going to say, but I just couldn't even go there. And this doctor said, I'm sorry, but we weren't able to fix Mark, and we've lost him. And so we went into Marky's room, and he was cold, and I'm pulling the covers up over him, and I leaned down to kiss him and saw a tear in his eye, and I kissed him, and I said, Marky, it's okay, Mommy's here. It's like Mommy couldn't fix anything, but I knew I couldn't, and then I just collapsed, and I really don't remember much after that. But I guess we left the hospital, and we were driving around in the car, and I couldn't bear to go home and see his clothes there, and but I knew I had to tell Chris, his brother. His brother was with him when Mark was hit by the car and left there when everybody ran to Mark. And so Chris had to walk home and tell the babysitter. And I just can't even imagine the pain that he had to go through.
So the trauma trickles off to the son as well. It's some really sick and diabolical shit going on, right? Mark just happened to be there, witnessed everything, and it's going to cause a cascade effect because of the Matrix life script, not just in Kat's life, but in Mark's life. I want to give a big shout out and thank you to Pale Horse Rider. I appreciate you, my friend. Always good to see you. Thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated.
And so he came running to me and he said, Mommy, did you hear what happened to Marky? And I said, I'm sorry, Chris, but the doctors weren't able to fix Mark. And he just stiffened out screaming and went to his room. And, he never was the same after that. Through psychologists and doctors and different things, but nothing could heal in him the pain that he had and the pain that I had. And
he was never the same. And of course, Kat was never the same. Losing a young child, losing a brother at a young age. It's the amount of fury raging inside of me can't be described. And it's not for dramatic effect. It's compassion and empathy. It just, and this is just one example in a sea of many that certain individuals will experience. But no matter how much money you have, no matter how poor you are, everyone is going to have suffering. Everyone. You can have it all. You can grow up with rich parents, poor parents, but in the end, the Matrix is setting us up. And until we realize it, and what's really interesting too is how individuality is shunned upon constantly. You know, the whole "we are one" narrative. We're all one. We're all connected with Source or Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad and, you know, or God. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Well, why are these narratives out there? That's the question that should be asked. Why are we just going to blindly submit and say, hey, all right, well, you know, everyone else is saying it, so it's got to be true. Just like all the other religions. The New Age is the worst. But it's really not the worst because there's so many other ones. It's like it just happens to depend on where you plop down in your life script this incarnation. Maybe you'll run into Buddhism. Maybe you'll run into Catholicism. Maybe you'll run into Judaism. Maybe you'll run into New Age. I mean, and on and on and on and on. I'm sorry, let me just adjust my inner Palladian chakras and, you know, maybe things will improve.
So after that, again, our marriage was not going well. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to see anybody. I just wanted to get through each day. I kind of sit in a chair staring out the window, and that was my life. After a few weeks of that, Dawn was saying to me, "Kat, you have to get out of the house. You can't just do this. You need to get up and you need to start trying to get out of this that you're in." And I was just furious. I said, I'll never get out of this. I didn't want to. And I remember these two little nuns from a church nearby came by to tell me about Jesus Christ and how my son was with him now. And I screamed at them. I said, I'll tell you about your Jesus. Your Jesus kills little children. And I slammed the doors in their faces and sit down the other side, just, screaming out in hatred.
You tell him, sister.
Any God, that anybody believed in. I just did not. And I, at that point, was a total atheist. I hated even the mention of God. Don't even mention that around me, or I would climb all over somebody. And
that's right, Kat. Should have stuck with that line of thinking, because it's all a con job. We've all fallen for this con job. And depending on where you've grown up, the situation you've grown up into, the path that you have, quote unquote, taken or been given in your life script, the worst thing anyone can do is look at this world and base it on themselves, right? Especially in the Western world. I'm talking especially with the Western way of thinking. We have plumbing, we've got electricity, we've got grocery stores, and there's all these sorts of programs if you can't afford groceries or there's everything, right? And that's great, okay? But at the same time, someone who is struggling, someone who's grown up in an absolute dumpster fire, a nightmare situation, or is currently living in a nightmare situation, just because there are modern conveniences doesn't mean that it makes up for the rest of everyone out there, right? Just for a moment, everyone here, right now, needs to think about if they grew up in North Korea or if they grew up in Iran or if they grew up, pick the country. China even. I mean, pick the country. And if you didn't have access to information, if you didn't have access to look at the collective, it's not just about you, it's not just about me, it's about all of us looking and being honest with ourselves. That and also, of course, investigating what actually occurs with being a human. The human body is very intricate and well thought out, and it is designed for suffering. Period, point blank, non-negotiable. And I may be getting heated and worked up, but everyone has to kind of get to the honest understanding that this is what's going on. How can everything be love and light, rainbows and unicorns, fairies and pixie dust, if you are living in a human body? It just cannot be explained away anymore. Then you look at the world, look at the control structures out there, look at history, look at human sacrifice, all the suffering that goes on. This is a consistent pattern that does not ever stop. It doesn't stop. So when you have that knowledge, and then rewind back, not just to your life, but taking others into consideration, regardless of how easy a ride or rough of a ride you had, there's always someone out there who has it worse. You always have to look at everyone else who's suffering and say, is this really all about love? That's the narrative out there, my friends. And it pops up over and over and over again. It doesn't make any sense. And if we're here to grow and learn, just like we're told, you're here to grow, it's a learning experience, and on and on and on, all the typical narratives that are pushed not just by individuals, but from the astral realm, the control structure of this matrix itself. It's saying the same thing over and over and over again. If everything is to learn and grow and evolve spiritually, yada, 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 then why, oh, why do we come here lifetime after lifetime under the veil of forgetfulness? The memory wipe. This is something that just cannot be explained away. And anyone who wants to explain it away and just kind of bank or have faith on something claiming to be God or source or the creator, or you pick it, it doesn't make any sense. It's nonsensical. This whole realm and the experience related in the other realms, we'll just say the astral realms to shorten everything up, all of this stuff works in unison. And it trickles down onto us, especially in the age of information, the age of technology. It's all there. And the matrix is clearly showing itself in experiences like cats. It's using cat as a pawn. It's using many other experiencer types as a pawn. It doesn't matter what it is. We're not just talking about NDEs. There's over 20 different topics and subtopics which relate and funnel all into one another and show the deception. And the other thing I like to say is like, hey, if I'm wrong, if we're all wrong here, sitting here and saying, okay, yeah, this whole thing is bullshit and blah, 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 well, so be it. I'm perfectly fine with, taking a knee on all that stuff. And, maybe we are wrong, but I sure as hell am not going to just trust that what the light is going to tell me is the truth, or my quote unquote deceased loved ones and on and all this stuff is on the up and up when we are living in a world, a freaking nightmare of deception. It can no longer be explained away. And Kat's life is a perfect example of that. The Matrix has just pummeled her since the day she got here and hasn't stopped. And yeah, maybe things get better and you'll see how they get better. But there's also seems to be a little trade-off, right? And you'll see what that's all about. That's just my opinion. You know, perhaps I'm wrong, but it seems to present itself pretty clearly.
So then Don told me one night, we're going to go out tonight. We hadn't been out of the house. I hadn't been out of the house in weeks. And he said, we're going over to our friend's house and you need to do this. You need to get out away from the house. And so I was kind of arguing with him and we started walking out the door to go. And I was telling him, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I can't smile. When I smiled, I just felt this horrible guilt. You know, moms aren't supposed to let their kids die. And I had done that, and the guilt was just overwhelming. So we got in the car and we started bickering and fighting with each other. And down the street we went, and Don said the words to me, you need to move on. And it was like a match going into gasoline. I just blew, and I came across the seat at him, just striking him in the face and clawing him. I'll never move on. I'll never move on. I was just furious. And he took his arm and went like this as hard as he could to protect himself from this wild woman. And it knocked me over to the other side of my car. And I just slunk down. And I said, take me home, which he did. And when we got in the house, I grabbed the car keys and I was mad. And I ran out the door, hopped in the car, and he ran out the door screaming at me. And I just took off. And I felt this pain inside of me, but I didn't know if it was, if I was physically hurting or if my heart was breaking. I really didn't know. And I just kept driving, and it was pouring down rain again. And I pulled over the side of the road because the pain got so severe, and I undid my clothes and I'm soaking wet. And I knew I have to get back home. Something's really bad wrong with me. And I slid back. I don't even know how I got back home, but when I drove up the driveway again, Don was at the door furious with me. And I kind of crawling up the driveway, all bent over and soaking wet and my clothes all undone. And I said, I got past him and he said, where are you going? And I said, I need to call an ambulance. I need to get to a hospital. And he said, well, I'll take you to the hospital. And he was just angry. And so we got in the car, we went to the hospital, and I'm laying in the bed there, and the doctors came in and asked me where I got the bruise on my back. And I didn't want to tell them my husband hit me. He's not a wife beater. He's a really great guy. And I thought if something does happen to me, will they arrest him? What will happen? So I told them I didn't know. And they said, well, we suspect you have internal bleeding. We're talking back in the 60s, and they didn't have MRIs or CAT scans back then. So they just could go by blood count or blood pressure or whatever. And they said, we need to take you into surgery right away and find out something's wrong. And we went into surgery, and they were wheeling me down the hallway into surgery, and they stopped the gurney, and Don leaned over and kissed me and told me that he loved me. And I thought, I didn't even think he liked me anymore, let alone loved me. So it was so wonderful. I just clung to that vision when we went into surgery, and the doctors were there with masks leaning over me and all. And I knew things should be getting dark and I should be going under. But for some reason, I knew everything that was going on. And it did fade away, and it got very, very dark, but I still was aware of the chatter of the emergency room. And then it got very quiet, and I started moving through that darkness and out the other side into what appeared to be a hallway. And I remember looking down, seeing my other two sons and Don standing by a lamp pole, and they were crying because I had died. And I told them, no, I'm fine. I'm okay. I didn't die. I'm okay. And then I moved on, and I saw 4 human figures standing off to the left. dressed in street clothes. I knew they weren't angels or anything. I don't even know at that point I knew I was dead, but I didn't really know what was going on. And I floated past them, and they had these really concerned looks on their faces, like something was drastically wrong. And I just, I didn't know who they were. I didn't see Mark, my son, and he had died. So I don't know who those, to this day, who those people were, whether they were distant relatives or what. But
Okay, so I mean, this is an interesting case, right? Because you would think that the Matrix would give her the illusion of her son, but it doesn't happen. It's almost like when you hear this and you think about all the other cases, doing your own research and some of the cases that were presented here on this channel, when you kind of look at that, it almost seems like a trolling against Kat. Don't you think that they would provide the illusion of her son? And of course you can say, oh, well, it depends on the life script and yada, yada, yada. But this part has never sat well with me. But it, in the same breath, clearly the Matrix knew what it was doing, because it didn't take much either. When you have someone at the lowest of their low and have been browbeating them throughout their entire life, perhaps you have some inside information. Of course, there's the memory wipe too, but which blocks the connection to the life script and the previous lifetimes and all that stuff. But really, really doesn't sit well with me. Considering everything that she went through and coming out the other side and working at the behest of the Matrix marketing department, the least they could have done was gave her the illusion of her son. And it's the least they can do. It's just dirty. They just, from day one of Kat entering the Matrix, she's been getting her ass handed to her.
They looked very, very concerned for me, and I didn't understand that.
Oh, yeah, they're concerned.
And then I went past them, and then all of a sudden I heard this horrendous noise, like a freight train was coming right down on top of me. And I felt this burning, pulling rope or whatever, pulling through my chest, 100 million miles an hour, just pulling and burning, and this horrendous noise. And then it just stopped. And the thought came to me, there is no God. And then all of this happened. And then it stopped, and I knew that God existed. And I can't tell you how I knew, but I knew, just like if I put my hand out here, that's my hand, and nobody's going to convince me that that's not my hand. That's the truth. And I knew that God existed.
See, this is the power that it yields. Nobody is going to tell me any different. Nobody can present information or perhaps say to Kat, hey, maybe everything we're dealing with is a deception. Maybe everything is kind of falls under the rules of duality or the laws of duality that govern this shit show. It's the point of no return to just automatically give in. And that's how this system sets it up, right? From cradle to grave. What can you do?
I knew, just like if I put my hand out here, that's my hand, and nobody's going to convince me that that's not my hand. That's the truth. And I knew that God existed. I knew that God did exist. And I was excited because, there was somebody in control of all this mess. So I was excited. And then I started moving on again, and I heard the same noise. And I thought to myself, there is no heaven. And this noise, like a train running over me and then pulling through my chest. And then it stopped. And I knew heaven was a real place, heaven existed. And I saw beyond me that this brilliant light was being held back by a door or some kind of structure. But I was moving towards it, and I knew I was going to heaven. And I was so excited. Now, this feeling that I had, this peace that absolutely was beyond anything I'd ever felt in my life, this extreme euphoria of peace and any good feeling that you can possibly have, had encompassed me from the time that I knew God existed to the point where I knew I was going to heaven. And it was so strong that even knowing I was leaving my family, knowing they would be okay, I was so excited. I could leave my family. I could leave everything on earth. Going towards this was the most beautiful. I can't even describe it. I can't. So it's hard to even try.
So this is explaining the power this whole system yields, right? And unless you are going to engage in it, if you're going to consent, if you're going to apply your intention to go and follow it with the dangling carrot down the tunnel or in the void with the carrot in the distance, which is the light, and it's dangling the carrot. It's like, hey, come. Trust me. Everything is all right. Then, well, the Matrix wins, right? Don't give in to this bullshit. It's banking on giving you the euphoria, the love bomb, the drugging, so that you comply. If this system was authentic in what it claims to be, it would not have to emit this love bomb. It would not have to emit this endless amount of BS to get us to comply. But once you're in its grips, once you're let, what is it? Curiosity killed the cat. Once you let curiosity get the best of you, or deceased loved ones, which are attachments, on and on. You pick any of them. Once that occurs, I don't know what to really say. I think it's a very, very slippery slope, if not close to impossible to get out of it once you've thrown your intention towards it. So you have to know that you can shield yourself, protect yourself, and get the hell out of the Matrix and make a rational decision that is not based in being hit with a love bomb. All of us need to do that and just see what the hell happens. I don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. Anyone is claiming to have all the answers, they're full of shit. There's no channeling. There's no amount of information that anyone can throw at you or me or anyone else and claim that things are definitive. But what is clear is that we can take control if we want to, if we don't allow the illusion of this dumpster fire to get the best of us. So which path are you going to choose? Sovereignty, liberation, non-interference, shielding? Or are you just going to bank that, the light, the tunnel, everything is as it's claimed to be? Or I'm going to go into the Matrix void and the light will be in the distance. And, I really think the Matrix void is designed to get us bored or to strike fear in some individuals. Some have a lot of fear. And I think that's interesting. The fear component in the Matrix void is fascinating because what it shows us is that the sensory experience is extremely powerful. Some cases you hear it constantly, actually, that you just, some individuals out there cannot hack it. And if you think about it, it's to no fault of their own. we all come here to Earth and we're involved in this full-on wacky sensory experience. And so if the matrix void is where they pop you in, and the light is in the distance somewhere, maybe far away, maybe kind of close, but it's there. And sometimes you could be getting your ass kicked by entities and telepathic communication, whatever the case may be. It seems to be playing both ends of the spectrum. And all it's hoping is to convince us. That's it. So if you deny them the ability to convince you or drag you into their BS, then it holds no power. And that's the beauty of things like some NDEs, astral projection, breakthrough trips, shared death experiences, and a number of other categories I can't even think about mentioning at the moment. So I apologize. But the point is intention and denying to interact, denying consent is everything. And then, if we're all wrong, we'll pack up our balls and go home. But in the meantime, why take a chance? That's the question. Why take a chance? If everything's so inverted and full of BS here, then why would we just assume that it's not once we leave our bodies and die? Remember, the whole system involved out there in the astral, or wherever the hell you want to call it, is involved with here. The connection is absolutely 1,000,000,000% confirmed. That's confirmed. So if the two are related, in throwing all this at all of us, and we're all here, right? We've all decided to come here at some point. And we're all sitting here today, chatting away and going over this experience because we fell for some BS. So why not take control of ourselves, see what the hell happens, and take it from there? But if you kind of go against that, taking the sovereign path, the liberated path, then it seems that illusions are very easy to sneak in and take advantage of us. And I'm done with that. So I hope, at least anyone new or is otherwise on the fence considers what we're talking about, because it's so important. Let's move on.
But it was incredible.
Gullibility, exactly, drones and other tones. Exactly, my friend. Good to see it too.
That you could leave all of that behind and move into this for eternity was weird. But I know that they're right behind me. I knew that. And then the bottom just dropped out. I was almost there. The bottom dropped out. I started falling into total darkness. And I knew I was falling into hell. And I was, of course, terrified. And there was no lake of fire, no demons, nothing, just total blackness. And I was feeling the pain of burning, but I didn't see any flames because of the fact that it was so totally dark, totally void of anything. And I was screaming out to God. I knew I was in hell.
She was screaming out to God. Boy, I wonder if the Matrix is going to deliver. No offense to Kat, but we've seen this how many times?
Screaming out to God. I knew I was in hell, and I knew God hadn't sent me there. I knew that my blasphemy against God, I didn't want to believe in God. I screamed against God. I screamed, leave me alone. Just if you do exist, which I didn't believe he did. I don't want no part of anything that has to do with God.
So that was
my doing. My going into hell was my fault, not God's. And I was screaming out to God, please forgive me. I believe in you. Please forgive me and take me from this place. Now, the total separation from anything, everything is a horrible, horrible thing. I mean, separation from God, who could be in control or of everything or anything, but you're falling into total darkness. Nobody knows you ever existed, not even God. You're going to fall and burn in there forever and ever and ever. You're not going to hit bottom. You're not going to, can't commit suicide. You can't make it stop. You're going to be there for eternity, forever and ever and ever. And I knew that, but I was wrong, thank God. I was screaming out to God to forgive me. And you know, there could be a lot of different places in hell. There could be the lake of burning fire, where they talk about, or other people who have seen demons. And possibly if I'd have gone further, that would have happened, but it didn't. Mine was mostly just the total absence of anybody knowing I ever existed. I had ceased to exist. And so as I was crying out to God, I felt myself kind of coming back.
Oh, I was just talking without the mic on. I'm sorry. All right, so I apologize. I'm gonna back it up just a minute here.
People have seen demons, and possibly if I'd have gone further, that would have happened, but it didn't. Mine was mostly just the total absence of anybody knowing I ever existed. I had ceased to exist. And so as I was crying out to God, I felt myself kind of coming backwards, back out of that, back into the tunnel.
Okay, so it's really interesting, right? Because we've seen a number of cases like this, and there's endless amounts that you can do with your own research to find these, where there is kind of two different camps. You have the camps that are involved with the void, and they're completely fine. They're content, no big deal, but they always fall for it. But then there is the other camp that has usually a certain mindset which leads them to the experience being negative, or they perceive the experience to be negative. Now, I've talked about this a lot, even in this stream, that I think what the Matrix does is provide a false void, a fake void. Now, my gut tells me that our true essence is, when you strip it bare down to its core, the minimum, that we all likely, not saying this is absolutely true, but my gut tells me that we our kind of stripped down existence, our core essence, relates with a void like realm. So what the Matrix does is provide that. Now, what you learn here, this is the key part. What you learn here, the belief systems that you have, carry over either if you have an NDE or in the afterlife. If you allow those belief systems to stranglehold you, then the Matrix will take advantage of it. And it's going to roll the dice and say, okay, well, I'm going to throw this one into the light, or I'm going to throw this one into our void. And some will make it out and realize their true power. Some won't. I think if you end up with the light and down the, going down the tunnel and getting to the light and dealing with the love bomb, I think it's close to impossible for us to turn around and assert ourselves clearly because of the tools that they have. But if you're in the void, the matrix void, talking about the matrix void, then, well, maybe it's easier to get out. But it's going to direct us. If I had to go on a hunch, I would say that it's going to direct us to something like a matrix void if it knows it can take advantage of us. If it's calculated the risk versus reward, that it's going to get Kat or anyone else that goes in the matrix void to go along with the ride. That's just kind of my guess. So, all I got to say is don't mess with any of it. That's all.
Coming forward across what I had, where I had been. And then I heard a voice say to me, bring people to me. And I knew it was the voice of God. And I felt,
bring people to me. Bring people to me. This is the Matrix marketing department. Rearing its ugly head. I mean, come on. Bring people to me. And you know what we'll do? We'll give you an easier life. You'll start to make some money. Life will be comfortable. But bring people to me. Bring the slaves to me so that they can give away their essence freely. And we'll reward you while you're down here. After dealing with an absolute dumpster fire of a life that the Matrix handed. Just so screwed up. Beyond screwed up.
Out to God. I felt myself kind of coming backwards, back out of that, back into the tunnel, coming forward across what I had, where I had been. And then I heard a voice say to me, bring people to me. And I knew it was the voice of God. And I felt the spirit, my spirit, enter back into my body. And I don't know how to explain that either, other than when I believe that we are spiritual beings, and that when we die, our spirit leaves this flesh and blood body that rots, and the older we get, the more we see that happening. But thank God that we could leave it, and that we leave, but our spirit lives on, and it lives on for eternity. And so I felt my spirit come back into my body, and as that did, and the voice saying, "Bring people to me," then it came back out of this into the operating room again, and I was screaming at that point, there is a God, there is a God, and then, they put me back under again, and and when I went into the recovery room, and I was screaming to Dawn, I died. There is a heaven, there is a God, and that was over 55 years ago, and I am still screaming the same thing to everybody I can run into, any podcast I can get onto.
Still screaming. Well, I'll spread it far and wide, wherever I can. That's the Matrix marketing department. Making sure that the word is spread. They're trying to neutralize any sort of objections against it in full force. I mean, that they're not holding back. It doesn't matter how good, how bad a life script someone's had, or how much suffering someone's been through, like Kat, the poor thing. I mean, it's just horrible what she went through for many, 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 many years. And then it's like, hey, well, we're going to give you a better life. And don't forget, promote us. Everything's love and light, It's all good. Karma's legit. Yada, yada, yada.
I can run into, any podcast I can get onto, there is a God, there is somebody in control of all this big mess. So, but stay right with him, and what is the path to God? I can't really say that your path is your path to God, but follow it and know that he does exist is so important. And for those who doubt about hell, I did too, but it's real. It's real. I mean, if there's, it just makes sense. If there's good in this world, that it's counterbalanced with bad. Everything has a balance to it, and so there is a God and there is evil. We see evil in this world, and what happens to that?
Let's take a trip down Duality Highway. You ready? No offense to Kat, but this is where we're headed.
It just makes sense. If there's good in this world, that it's counterbalanced with bad. Everything has a balance to it, and
how is it counterbalanced? I mean, again, most of the world lives, the bulk of the world lives in poverty. Just call it what it is. There's a lot of suffering out there. It's not all it's cracked up to be.
So there is a God and there is evil. We see evil in this world, and what happens to that? If they knew they were going to hell, would they be like that? Probably not. But Satan was the strongest angel in heaven, and Lucifer, and he thought he could be as God, and he took a third of the angels with him. So
all right. So since she brought up Lucifer, what is Lucifer? The light bearer, the light. And we could, look, there's so many other religions that talk about the light. And that's for a future video. I'm not going to go down a laundry list of that. But isn't it interesting how the light is constantly promoted here, regardless of belief system? Why is that? And then when you look at what the light is capable of, the love bomb, the euphoria rush, producing deceased loved ones, and on and on and on. Which leads me to one more thing. I just want to kind of give a sneak peek of what the upcoming monthly members live stream is going to be on the 26th at 7 p.m. That's going to be March 26th, 2023. 7 p.m. We're going to be going over some of what Michael Newton openly admitted, which is really interesting, and it's going to go to that. So keep an eye on that stream for anyone who's a member. And again, we'll be meeting the 26th this month at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Heaven, and Lucifer, and he thought he could be as God, and he took a third of the angels with him. So even people that were where I was at, they believe they can become as God. So I just makes sense. So there is hell. There are evil spirits trying their best to pull people down with them. So whatever, like I say, your path to God, please follow it. And it's a very important thing. So that's my story.
Okay. So yeah, just follow, just blindly trust. And this is kind of like where the problem comes in, right? It's like enough with blindly trusting what's going on out there. Before we continue, we're going to be going into a break shortly, but I want to give Pale Horse Rider another shout out. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you for the super chat. JJ gifted 11 memberships today. That is so kind and generous of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I know many in the chat who got the random membership giveaway from YouTube. Also appreciates it, so thank you so much. And also want to give a big shout out to those watching on Rumble and Odysee. I appreciate everyone, and Twitch. So hope you're all well out there. We're going to be going into a break now, and there's a lot more to come. So I will see you all shortly. And we've only just begun. See you soon. Oh, okay. So, I'm sorry. I have this new mixer, and I'm trying to get used to it. I have to manually hit a button on the side, so I apologize for the two incidents that we had during the stream where I was muted. Thank you, Bit of Venom, and everyone else who kind of gave a heads up on that. So, thank you. So, as I was saying, I would like to thank JJ again for gifting 5 memberships. It's so kind of you. Appreciate your kind and generous support and helping others. So, JJ is up to donating 16 memberships tonight. 16. Thank you so much. And of course, Pale Horse Rider was kind enough to donate as well earlier on in the stream. And anyone else who's donated through Stripe or Odysee or Rumble and has joined memberships on Odysee, I appreciate each and every one of you. And so let's move along. And just so you know, we've got quite a bit to get through. There's a lot here tonight. So, and before we continue, this channel is for educational purposes only. And let's roll. If I can get to the screen.
To God, please follow it, and it's a very important thing. So that's my story, and I'll keep screaming until I die.
There you go. Right? And yeah. When they came back, I always say I'm the unwilling messenger. In the sense that, they're like, do we have to keep calling you back?
Yeah.
About speaking and being authentic in your truth of your experience.
One thing I did want to say is that, I'm not.
I'd like to just point out this exchange. Oh man, how do I put this nicely? So, no offense to the host of the interview, but just hear what's said here.
And, yeah, when
To God, please follow it, and
just hear this out. Like you kind of sniff this stuff out sometimes with experiencers. So, please leave feedback in the chat if you kind of hear my translation. But I'm gonna let it play one more time.
A very important thing. So that's my story, and I'll keep screaming until I die.
There you go.
Here it comes.
Right? And yeah, when they came back, I always say I'm the unwilling messenger. In the sense that, they're like, do we have to keep calling you back?
Yeah.
About speaking and being authentic in your truth of your experience.
One thing I did want to say is that, I'm not special because this happened to me, and maybe somebody else doesn't have a near-death experience, and I hope you don't have to go through that. But that's what it took for me to come to God, and I'm not special. So I believe that we all have the opportunity, some people even when the dying process. So if you've had a loved one say that they didn't know God, they hated God or whatever, it's possible that during the dying process that they went through the same thing I did and had that opportunity to receive God as their Savior. And so that's that.
Okay, so is it just me, or did Kat kind of sniff out a little guru complex going on? I'm just saying, just pointing it out. That's all. And kind of set things straight. I don't know, but that's kind of my gut feeling on it. I could be completely wrong, but I'd love to hear what each of you have to say in the chat in response to how that conversation just went. I don't know.
That's important to know.
Mm-hmm. Very. And I was going to ask you about that, how our perceptions change, because before you said like you were Gnostic, we had talked about probably prior to this, and then, you went atheist, and then your experience, you fully, embrace God. And, I find that so remarkable in the sense that, God loves us all. The opportunities always there.
No,
But my
God
question
doesn't
for
love
you,
us
because
all.
I have different people that talk about it. My understanding of the void is that absence of God, like that absence of light that you were in, that darkness where nothing exists, and
I mean, how awful is that? It's like you're being crowbarred into the tunnel and on into the light or to the light. It's like, oh, God forbid you end up in the void. Now, the void experiences are very mixed, but some interpret it as quote unquote hell. And of course, it has to do with their own life script and what they've done. And if there's this guilt, fear, shame factor going on that, they have to answer to something, that's a big, big part of how someone interprets the void experience.
void is that absence of God, like that absence of light that you were in, that darkness where nothing exists, and then I call like those the fires, are the cleansing fire of all that earthly baggage and that hate, all those things that are not of God. Because to me, God is like pure love. And I was just curious, like when you were in that space, is that how you felt? Like that you were like totally disconnected from that light of his love?
Absolutely. Like I say, I felt like I was non-existent. Nobody even knew of that I lived, was there, or there was just totally alone, and not even God knew it. But I was wrong. I mean, but God did know I was there. But yeah, there was total absence from anything or anybody. And
How convenient that God knew she was there. Just saying. I mean, it's like, how many red flags do we need, my friends? Not for the experiencer, but just the overall functionality of how this place works.
and not even God knew it. But I was wrong. I mean, but God did know I was there. But yeah, there was total absence from anything or anybody. And nobody could throw a rope over the top and save you. No, I said, no, but no 911, nothing. So
Nothing but yourself.
Nobody knows you're there. How could they come after you? So it's a horrible, horrible feeling. It was just awful and not describable really, but awful.
No. So like people, when they say that they have connected and had that experience, they feel like this indescribable sense of love and light that just like hugs them. I know that was the truth from my experience. So as soon as you like recognized and called out to that, did you feel like it enveloped you? Like you just felt this huge wave of love of your creator?
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel that even today sometimes in my time of meditation or worship to the Lord, I can get to that place again of that exhilarated feeling. Like probably not 100%, but it's enough to just really push me on.
That's key right there. She wants the exhilarating feeling, the Matrix love bomb, the emotional component, the reunion component, the home component. Pick whatever it is. She experienced what she experienced, but she just can't wait, just like many others, to go, quote unquote, home. But home is basically a drug dealer.
And I think that's a big thing. I think that worshiping our Creator is something that He wants, and I love that. I do it a lot of times just with songs of music that just
Worship.
Especially if I'm alone, and turn it up real loud and just bring myself there, and it's incredible. And so living with that is great. Yeah.
So you're able to call on that. I always call it, that divinity within you that when in those moments that you need it. Like, do you find that like, because the integration process after that, I always find interesting as well. Like, how did you integrate that whole switch in perception in your life? I mean, like when you were confronted with different situations where maybe you didn't want to be loving, or before you went to bed, did you see it totally different? Like, did you see it from like the way you would want like God to see you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I changed drastically. So here I was, this kind of bitter, angry person that shut away, to being this outgoing, vibrant, there is a God. I mean, I just changed so dramatically. And what God had asked me to do, to bring people to Him. Well, who am I? I mean, I didn't know how to do that. I knew nothing about religion or faith in God.
God doesn't care, quote unquote, God. I hate to even call it that, but for lack of a better word, God of the Matrix, the phony con artist of the Matrix, or the computer AI program that's running in the background claiming to be God, doesn't care. All it wants is for you and I and everyone else to believe in it. And that's its objective, and it achieved this objective with Kat and made sure that she did as she was told, or it, quote unquote, advised, whatever you want to call it. She's doing her job at the behest of the Matrix and propping everything up. And it's to no fault of her own. It's just that this is how the system works.
And so I would go out and say things and tell people what happened. And I just scared a bunch of people. I didn't bring anybody to God or bring anybody to Christ. And so it was like, I did start going back to church, and
well, that's
and
good.
It was a Catholic church because I didn't know any better. My mom was a Catholic. And so I went to Mass every single day. And then I one day just felt a voice saying that I needed to go on to a church where I could learn more about God. And I did, and went to a church where they taught scripture in the Bible. And it was all new to me. But the way I read the Bible, and anybody can do this, whether you believe in the Bible or not, doesn't matter. It's a great book of wisdom and history.
Here comes the big opening that the Matrixes provide. Remember, she's sifting in and out of churches and all this other stuff, trying to figure out what will possibly please the false AI Matrix God, so that more and more will become convinced and sign on to the belief system that this whole thing is legitimate. And then, boom, she finds her calling, because the Matrix has pointed her in that direction the whole time. To no fault of Kat or anyone else who's gone through this. Again, my heart goes out to every single individual that has had to deal with this. But we have to just call it out for what it is. It has nothing to do with Kat or any single individual who has an NDE. It has to do with what's going on here and how it doesn't add up over there, and how everything is inverted over here and everything is clearly inverted over there as well. Deception is their main tool. So until the deception could be spotted and called out for what it is, then it's just going to keep winning. And it doesn't deserve to win. Not one more reincarnation should occur. This whole system deserves to be called out for what it is. And the bullshit meters should be flying off the roof. And there's so few of us. There's so few of us that truly see this dumpster fire for what it is. Now, does that mean that there's no good? That there's no enjoyable aspects to this realm? Absolutely not. There's a lot of fun to be had. But in the end, when you strip it at its core, it's going to provide both ends of the spectrum so that we continue to buy into the illusion. And when you're at your lowest lows, it may creep in and deliver love and light, or a hell-like experience if you go out of your body or have an NDE, whatever you want to call it. So let's move along. Sorry.
And different things. So even if you don't want to believe in Christianity, but open the Bible up in the New Testament, and see if it doesn't speak to you, because I haven't done that so many times. You know,
Oh,
there's
it doesn't.
I'll read a few, chapter, and there is something there that I needed to hear. It's really weird. So, and I underline, my Bible's like a diary. I mean, it's all written up and messed up, and yeah. So that it's really a great way to know God, and for whatever reason, whether it's inspired by God, which Christianity believes, or
Praise the
whether
Lord.
it's just a bunch of wise men that wrote it. I don't care what you believe. It's history, and it's great wisdom, and a good thing. So I changed drastically, and everybody I know either bought into it and still liked me, or they stayed away from me.
I was just going to ask you that, like how your relationship shifted.
It's kind of like searching truth, right? It's kind of like calling this realm out for what it is. You're going to lose people. You're going to connect with others. You're going to find like-minded individuals. And sometimes you're going to be lonely. And that's the tough part, right? I mean, everyone's got to do what they got to do, but at the same time, it's nice to be able to relate and connect with like-minded individuals. But does that mean you throw away everything at home in your waking life in this matrix? No. But it sure seems that this whole thing is a setup job from the jump, right? Because it really doesn't matter what your belief system is. We can just take we can take what's occurred over the last couple of years just as a prime example, right? Just over the last 2-3 years. Take that as an example, and wanting to help others and warn others, and you know what I'm talking about. Can't say it out loud, but you know what I'm saying. Those types of things. You want to help those that you care about and love, and your friends, your family, etc. But it can only go so far. They're going to do what they're going to do, and we're going to do what we're going to do as individuals on an individual level and make choices. But when does it end? When does being truthful about this place take precedence over the suffering? It just doesn't seem to happen.
Drastically, and everybody I know either bought into it and still liked me, or they stayed away from me.
I was just going to ask you that, like how your relationship shifted. I find that's like the hardest part of integrating this, because they still are seeing you in your old storyline, like who you were, and they're like, who is this person? It's like you're a total,
Yeah.
It's like, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like, who are you and what did you do with them? I mean, did you get that kind of when you came back?
Yeah, what I didn't, Don, my husband, went right along with it. I drug him into the Catholic Church. We paid all this money to get our marriage blessed and all. And nope, we're not going here. We're going to this other church. And he went along with it, because he believed, I guess, what I'd been through. And my kids, my sons, they're very much believers in Christ, and my oldest son is even professing Christ and has gone on podcasts. And he went through a horrible time. I mean, watching his brother die like that had such a traumatic effect. And he went through drugs and alcohol, was in a 1%er biker club, and different things that he came out of finally, and now does ministry into these biker clubs where he can go in and, because they'll talk.
So not only did the Matrix get Kat, but it got her son. And, her son, again, went through absolute hell. Imagine seeing your brother run over by a car. You can't fault anyone for trying to find inner peace and relief within by any means necessary. You just can't. So we all have to have compassion and empathy for this. So for as many times as we can laugh and break down everything, like, there's real true essence beings behind all of this. And they don't deserve to be toyed with. They don't.
Talk to him, and he's a great guy, a great guy. So my whole family and my immediate friends around me, I have a circle of very strong Christian friends, and a couple of them that keep me in line, because I sometimes get off track here. And so I keep people around me that I can trust, that I can go to when I have issues of my faith, and who help build me up. And I've got my other friends I go out and have a glass of wine with, and play golf with, and have fun with. And so, yeah, and they all know my story, every single one of them. And even the partying golfer friends, I mean, they believe me, and they like me still, I think. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, I am who I am. And so I feel that I, even though I've had this experience, am accepted just as a person.
See, that's so beautiful. There's a lot of people that struggle with that or lose their whole support system, and they just don't know where to turn. And I've always said, I say spirit and God, but is to, remove anyone from my picture that isn't for my highest good, and the highest good of, where my journey is headed, And so I always trust that, like, if somebody moves out of my sphere, then they're not in that space with me, because I can, like you, that authenticity. I wanted to thank you for your authenticity, in the sense that, you are a beautiful divine creation, and you can't be any different than who you are.
That's right.
And that's just how it is. And so I love that you step into that, and your whole experience, in that sense that you are a messenger. Now,
okay, so before she continues, I think it's important to point out that she admitted just about 20 seconds ago that, it's like asking permission. It's like, oh, well, weed out individuals in my life that may be causing me a problem. Asking something exterior to herself for permission to remove these individuals from her life. Now, what if some of those individuals are critical thinkers? What if some of those individuals question this matrix? The question really becomes is, how much damage is being done and how much benefit is being produced out of all these requests. I mean, I don't know. Make of it what you will.
They said, you said something about God said, bring them to me. Was that right? And I'm just curious, like, how do you see that in your storyline, as far as how do you bring that to fruition? By speaking for these podcasts, I know you do that as well. Do you feel it's like that you bring God's love to people? Like, you're a living example of that?
Yes. I mean, like I say, when I first started, I had no idea what to do. I educated myself in ways to do that. God said, bring people to me. Well, how do you do that? Well, you do it through example, for one thing. I mean, you're not going to be able to tell anybody anything unless they like you somewhat, or they trust you. And I think being a good friend to people is important, that nobody is more important than the other guy. They don't have to look a certain way, or they don't have to have money, or they don't have to have this or that. A human soul is no more important, this one than the other one. And there's, God does not judge people in any way, shape, or form. So that's been my attitude. Before this happened, I would always want to sit next to the popular person. Now it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. Now I can sit with anybody and then just feel comfortable and understand who they are. So I think that being a good friend, being a good person in that way, knowing everybody's importance to God, and that might be a one soul that could be one to Christ. And quite frankly, I don't believe it's in my power that I bring people to God. I believe God sets it up. I mean, certainly, and that that I'm trying in a human way to pull them through. Here's a bridge.
Yes.
Here's a bridge. Walk over me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting because my one reverend friend always says, he's a bridge walker. He makes that bridge between the divine, the divine and the humanity of it, And I think that's so beautiful to be that bridge, So I just was wondering when you really touched on that with me, as far as, I always say something along the lines of like, don't judge the person, don't judge the divinity, by the person. Some of the most beautiful people I've met, most people might not ever speak to, but in their core, they get it all, and they know that divinity, and you're always missing out if you're judging that book by its cover, so to speak. I mean,
I know.
Yeah,
that's so true.
And it's kind of like that, and so I'm just curious, like, this is another thing I find with people also, though, is when you came back, did you see like the divine in everyone, like in the sense that like sometimes you want to see them from pure love and from that state, forgetting that they have this very human reactions and triggers and things that may not be as pretty. It's kind of like love them where they're at. Did you have a lot of that where like you trusted maybe or saw so much in them, and that expectation kind of just created a dissonance, you saw who they are and who they could be, and then trying to meet them where they're at? Was that kind of hard for you?
Yeah, I guess I'd have to say no. I think people that really were adverse to me, and I see it more on these podcasts by the comments. Occasionally I'll get somebody that doesn't like what I said, or they'll say things, but then it's strange. You have 50 people that love it, and one person that says bad, you focus on that bad one, but that doesn't happen to me anymore. I understand the pain in people, and so I don't really find it a lot in the flesh where people will say things to me, or I don't believe that, or you're crazy, or whatever. Are you on drugs? As a matter of fact, it's one of the things I had looked into when I had this was, could it have been an hallucination from the drugs and all that? Well, Dr. Bruce Grayson, he's a founding father of near-death experiences, studied him his whole entire life. I was one of his first patients there, and he has studied me over 25 years, and is a good friend. He wrote about me in his book Alive, and anyway, he can tell you exactly scientifically why these are not hallucinations, why they are not drug induced, why they are not dreams, why they're not all these things that people come up with, and that's all explained in his book and somewhat in my book too. So so those people that don't want to believe, I was there, I was the one telling people, I don't go for that, get out of my house. And so I do understand them, and I pray for them. I pray for them.
Yeah. And you get a lot of, it depends upon the platform, but yeah, you do get some of that kind of feedback, and I can totally relate.
Okay, I just want to say one thing, and this is absolutely no I'm not crapping on Grayson at all. I mean, his work is incredible. But technically, if you want to get technical, the godfather of near-death experience, at least in our modern time, is Raymond Moody. That's all. I mean, that does not take away at all from Bruce Grayson's work. I mean, it's top notch. So, anyways, just thought I'd throw that out there. They've both done an amazing job, and as well as a number of other individuals to get the data out there, the consistency, the patterns of the near-death experience field.
To that, I think, and do you find too, like you were saying, and you touched on it earlier, and I thought that maybe that's a really good topic, where I always say you don't have to die to learn to live. That's like the book I'm working on, that people sometimes get almost envious of people who have these spiritually transformative experiences. Like, well, I didn't have that, so how should I know? When I always say the divine is within you. If you sit with yourself long enough, you'll find it. I was just wondering if you ever deal with that, where people are like, well, you can have that faith because you've been there, like that not a disbelief, but more like, why are you different?
Right. Yes. I don't get a lot of that, but I'm sure people may think it. And I do try to tell people that I am not special, that I think that everybody goes through what I went through during the dying process. I went through a process because I was dying and was clinically dead, according to doctors. But we all go through that dying process. So people may not ever know Jesus Christ or may not know God until they go through that. Whatever faith or whatever thing you believe in, it's going to come to you in the dying process. And it's too bad it can't come to everybody beforehand. Why we got a little peek at it, I don't know why, because I really...
Yeah, it's going to come and manipulate you. That's why. It's waiting for the most opportune moment to sneak in and snatch you up. But it doesn't exist, right? If you are aware of its technique, if you're aware of its techniques, then it holds no power over you. It's when you give it the power that it can take you over. That's a big, big difference.
In the dying process. And it's too bad it can't come to everybody beforehand. Why we got a little peek at it, I don't know why, because I really don't know why. Because I was not a churchgoer, I was not a believer, I was not a nice person. But why some go through this and others don't, I really have no idea. But we have been given a gift, and I think most of us come forward with it. Our lives change dramatically for most of us, yeah.
My theory sometimes in hearing these and from my own experiences is that you got to that point of surrender. Like, I've suffered too much in a soul type of way that you need that healing, so to speak. Like, my understanding sometimes when I hear these is like, that's why I always ask the progression, like what brought you there? Because if you look, a lot of times with near-death experiences, not all, but they were in a point where like, I just can't, as a soul, you're just like, I can't move on any farther. So it's like, it's almost like a cleansing to go so that you can move forward in your experience. Like, I took on too much of this pain, and, I need you to walk beside me now, as far as God. I just was wondering if you can see that within your story, that like, I got to a point where I was just so filled with this suffering that, that God reached out to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And a lot of people go through that. I did. I attempted suicide 3 different occasions. One time with...
So, I'm going to back it up a minute, but here we have an open admission between both of them, right? But it's more or less applying to Kat, at least in the context of the conversation, and I'm sure it applies to Lori, is... it's like you reach your breaking point. And that's what we were talking about early on in the stream. This is a data point that pops up over and over and over again. Now, is it foolproof? No. But it's important because it shows how this could be a manipulative tactic, right? If someone is getting the kitchen sink thrown at them, day after day, month after month, week after week, year after year, decade after decade, then it seems clear that at some point when an individual is at their breaking point and calling out for help, that the Matrix will deliver. And that's what it does every single time. Now, breaking points can be different, right? That's another whole conversation in and of itself. It's like we can all sit here and say like, oh, well, I've had breaking points, multiple times in my life, and I didn't get any divine intervention or what have you. Well, I mean, I hate to say it, I really do, but it does seem that it picks very specific certain times in our life script. Now, does that mean any of us were any more or less deserving of those interventions? No. It just means that the Matrix is picking out its time specifically to target you in an effort to win you over in the long run. Remember, all that really matters in the end is what your belief system is while you're here, what you grew up with, what you currently believe at the point of interference, I guess you can say, and at the point of leading up to death and at the time of bodily death. Those moments matter most, because what the Matrix is designed to do is to win you over, to get you completely on its side. Trust it, not question it, and move along. So I guess the question is, why trust it? I mean, it's proven itself to be deceptive over and over and over again. So why give it the time of day? It just makes no sense. So, anyways, let's move along.
I attempted suicide 3 different occasions. One time with a loaded gun to my head, and John just came in and took it away from me. and the other time I took a bunch of sleeping pills, and I slept for 2 days and had a terrible hangover. And the third time I was on a ledge, third-story ledge on a hotel, and I took the screen out, sitting out on the ledge. And I just knew if I just went an inch further, all this pain would be gone. I just, I looked down, it's so easy. It'll all be gone. Just one more inch. And as I started to scooch forward, I saw a vision of my son, Chris, come straight at me and say, "Mommy, don't." And I fell backwards, and, that was the end of that. But I understand that terrible pain, and so many people aren't dumb enough to try to commit suicide, but it was such a horrible thing. And my thought came, what would have happened to Chris if I had done that? He lost his father, he lost his brother, and now his mother does something like that. So yeah, my heart goes out to suicide survivors and people that are related to them. The pain, like you're talking about, is so great. And certainly I felt that to the point of wanting to die. But, if I really wanted to die, I would have done it. And
Right.
almost did. But that horrible, horrible pain that you're talking about, and I'm sure you've got listeners out there right now that are suffering that. And there's a lot better ways to take care of it than suicide, where you're hurting other people, not yourself, and different horrible things that we go through in life, which is so sad. But hang on, you'll get through it. Look what you've done, and look what I've done, and turn to God. I mean, you don't have to go through all this to know God. You really don't. You really don't. But it does take a lot of perseverance and a lot of pushing forward.
Exactly, because it's going to bank on you buying into the localized BS, especially in the Western society. It's going to bank on you either falling into materialism or falling into religions. It doesn't matter. All it wants to do is win us over. That's its sole purpose. Lifetime after lifetime. And once it's achieved its goal, it moves on to the next. And some individuals will get NDEs. Some individuals will have a very profound experience that are as close to full-on lucidity as it gets. But if they don't know what they're capable of, if we don't know what we're capable of as creator beings, that we can use our intention to interact with all this garbage or choose not to interact with this garbage, then the Matrix wins, right? I mean, it's hoping that you don't figure out and find yourself and realize that you're a creator being with amazing abilities and that you're eternal. It's banking on that. It's banking on you flying down the tunnel into the light. It's banking on you falling into the void and feeling this tremendous guilt, or falling into the void and getting bored and disassociating and heading on to the light because, you know, what else is there to do? Because you just came from this massive sensory experience. We all just came from this sensory experience. So, you know, we got to go. We got to check our phone, check our email, check the news. What's going on with the war? I mean, and this is just, remember, we're in our modern day version of this BS. So why feed it? Why bank on what is being advertised is legitimate? That's all you got to ask yourself. How many times can we be lied to? And when the lies intersect with the astral realm, clearly it's proven, then why not take the sovereign approach? Why not take liberation? I just, you know, I know I repeat myself constantly, but, you know, there's tons of new people that are tons of soul essence beings that come across this content every day. And this channel does, you know, repeat itself constantly. But it's to show you the patterns, to show you that monotonous BS that happens, not just here, but in the astral. And the overall message is that every single one of us here today, and those who watch later, we all deserve better. Don't you think that you deserve better? Because you do. You're so much better, stronger than all of this. So why give it the time of day? And again, if everything is as advertised, then at some point we'll figure it out. We'll say, okay, hey, you know, I'm the jerk off, hanging out in my own realm and put up a shield, and, you know, I'm Mr. Sovereignty or Mrs. Sovereignty and Liberation, or there's no sex involved anyways, but I'm a sovereign essence being, and I'm chilling in my own void-like realm, and, well, you know, maybe part of what I experience on Earth has some legitimacy. Now, do I believe that? Hell no. Hell no. Hell to the no. But, you know, I mean, come on. Come on. It's like, why not demand, live your life in sovereignty and see what happens versus just throwing yourself and blindly believing? You know, well, that's the difference. That's all. Okay. Rant over.
Yeah.
I feel some of us are just really stubborn. You know, like it takes a lot to say, hey, you know,
I'm really
I need something
stubborn.
outside of myself.
Yeah.
You know, and I need that hand. And it's that, like, that love and trust that, you know, somebody is there to catch in those moments. And that's what I feel like, I say divinity does for me, you know, like I know I am always lifted up. I'm always safe. I'm always loved, and, you know, and supported in the journey of expansion that we call being human.
Prove it. Prove it. I mean, I just have to provide wake-up calls, right? I mean, it's no offense to Kat or Lori or anyone here that is watching this replay or live. For everything, all I know is I'm loved and, everything's fine and everything's hunky-dory. But, okay, so walk out your door tomorrow, go down the street, and what happens if you get clocked right in the face? What happens if a car runs you down? What happens if, you pick it. What happens if you get assaulted or kidnapped? These are real possibilities that can happen to anyone. And living in this bubble and not acknowledging the horrors, the endless horrors that exist outside in the real world will only get someone so far. And there's only, look, I fell into the new age. I readily admit it. I've talked about it many times. I've fallen into the new age. I allowed myself to get in a certain mindset and realized after some time that, I wasn't being honest with myself. Now, there is something to be said about where your mindset lands in all this, right? So there's a lot of truth there. But are you going to allow yourself to let that love and light part of your existence overrun your critical thinking, your discernment abilities, cognitive dissonance, all this stuff, right? Are you going to let that control you? And the answer should always be no. But, it's a real fine balancing act. And it's important that we all find what's right for us as individuals. But just don't let the clown show win. That's all. Just walk the center path as best you can. And hopefully you come out the other side of everything at the time of natural death and don't let the euphoria, the love bomb, all this stuff take hold of you. And the way I see it is if you're firm in your resolve, we're all sitting here today, the biggest thing any of us can do is make sure that the euphoria, the love bomb, blah, 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 all this stuff isn't even allowed to exist inside our reality, inside our realm, inside anything to do with our essence. It's simply not allowed. Cut it off at the tits right now. That's what we got to do. Make sure that it's just simply not allowed to happen. And you have to be firm about it. You have to be completely unrelenting. That's where I think all this comes in. We can't be half-assed about it. Or at least I can't be half-assed about it. I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but I think intention is key with all of this. It's like, if we're going to allow our thinking to overwhelm ourselves or take advantage of us, regardless whether it's here or especially in the afterlife when you cross over, then you don't want to leave even a smidgen of the door opened. And that's where everything kind of comes together. It's like, how confident are you in yourself as an individual? Not as a group here today, or not as a group in any other way, but how do you feel as an individual deep within that what you're doing for you is right? And that's, in my opinion, where sovereignty, liberation, creating your own realm, non-interference, which is shielding, all comes into play. And you realize that as a creator being, you're capable of all those things. And if, and only if, later on, everything is as advertised, I'm sorry, it's not. But if for some weird, freaky, creepy reason that there's reasons behind all of this, then we'll know. But don't go down the deception highway to get screwed. Take control of yourself. Feel confident, 100% confident about what your path is. Unrelenting. And that's all. And hey, I have no doubt that some of us will meet at some point. But until that day comes, until we've quote unquote had our time to readjust and rediscover ourselves and get all those memories back and know what we've done elsewhere outside of the matrix system, not just within, because the matrix system seems to be very complex and filled with multiple realms that run like an AI computer. Anyways, I don't know. That's kind of the end of that rant, but don't give in. Don't give in. This bullshit realm and everything that it's associated with doesn't deserve your attention or intention. All it deserves is a big middle finger. Not even that, really, because you shouldn't even have to give it a middle finger. Anyways, we'll move along. But before we move on, I just want to give a big thank you to JJ. I mean, JJ's on a roll. Donated another 5 memberships. Thank you, JJ. It's so kind of you, my friend. I appreciate you. And I know many others out there do as well. And AA for the very kind super chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Always good to see you. So thank you both. And let's move along.
You know, and it's like, you know, being away from that love, it was difficult at first. But then I realized that we can have that love here.
No, I mean, being away from the love, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go too long, but being away from the love is exactly what they hope for, right? They hope that they can drop the carrot in the experiencer situation, regardless of who you are, and then you're going to come back and spread the word about how loving and correct and righteous that, you know, quote unquote, God is, and Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad and Allah and on and on and on. It's going to present all the situations and customize it based on your individual belief system. But does that make it, you know, on the up and up? I don't think so.
If we see it in each other and be that mirror, you know. And so, you know, to me, I love your message about like bring them to me in that sense, like you said, that you were being by example.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you feel like that is a way to see the divine, in the sense that when you are doing all those loving acts, that is flowing through you?
Oh, I don't really think about that much. I think about my relationship with God a lot, and I want to do the right things, and I don't know that I always do, and I know my human self gets in the way, but I try so hard each day to let God's will be done and to be that example of Him living through me, you know, not and putting me down, let God come through me. And I do that prayer before I come on podcasts like this, or if I run up against a person that is questioning or having issues, my mind quickly goes, God, you take over here. You take over, because I'm not going to have the right words.
Right. I often feel like, there's a part of me that like steps aside and it just flows through me.
Right.
I've been in that space of that love, and it just flows through me when people are brought to me, so I feel that that's, how we're kind of messengers. Like, he knows that we're here and we are open and of service, and he just flows that, what you would call probably his flock to you, that needs that message in the appropriate time, in the appropriate space.
Yeah.
And that's how I call like being the messenger.
Yes.
I don't seek people out to tell my story. You either resonate with it or you don't. But the fact that we're even here proves there's some form of creation, right?
Right.
Okay, so this seems like the perfect indoctrination program, right? It's like, hey, blast this energy, make sure the word is spread. Those who get it will get it. Those who don't. But what's not really said is how many other forms of indoctrination that this matrix has, right? It doesn't matter whether you're, near-death experiences, point blank, are a religion. Those who come back, especially when they've had a negative or hellish-like experience, most of the time, they're going to come back in trying to figure out what the hell happened to them. And as a result, what are they going to walk into? It doesn't take a brain surgeon to see it, but they're going to walk into the new age. They're going to walk into everything is love and light. Now, just imagine, put yourself in the footsteps of an individual who's had a hellish like NDE, or just some sort of negative NDE. And just imagine coming back and researching, trying to figure out what the hell happened to you, trying to figure it out. And, well, lo and behold, there is a whole industry ready and waiting for you. Ready and waiting. Endorf, ions, all these books, everything is set up, data patterns, all ready and waiting. So those that have had the negative experiences are going to be shit on the most, or at least going to have the biggest amount of trouble sharing their experience openly on the internet or in a book. And there's many out there, anonymous submissions and openly admitted with face and audio and all that stuff. I mean, it just depends. But how can your heart not connect with those types of individuals? And a lot of times, well, almost every time, those experiences are customized to the individual, just like with the love and light ones. So they're customized in a way that takes advantage of them, tugs at them. The manipulation tactics are so in our face, it's not even funny. But, when you're clouded by the veil of forgetfulness and come here lifetime after lifetime, not knowing, where you came from, why you were here, where you were going, and on, you tend to start to believe in a lot of stuff that this place is selling. I know I was one of them. So when do we choke it off and say, okay, go our own way?
Hey.
I love that that's how you bring forth your message. So I really appreciate that. Now, you had mentioned your son, and I think, from his story even and yours, it's always showed me that, we go through these trials and tribulations and rise higher through them so that we can reach others who are still in that darkness, like to be that ladder, to bring them back to their own divinity. Would you see that when you look at the pattern of like your life and your son's life? Like he would never be brought into that circle to reach those type of people if he hadn't had the path he got there from. It's so interesting to look back how everything was kind of divinely orchestrated. Do you see that in your life and just how that plays out?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, my son was in a biker gang, a biker club, he calls them. And I didn't know if he was going to live or die. He had alcohol poisoning to the point he's hospitalized, and drug addiction and all these things. And to see him.
And remember, the son witnessed his brother get run over by a car. So the cycle continues. And this goes to early childhood development. Anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to check out my video on that, and there will be future videos on that topic because it's so incredibly important. The change begins in the home. The change begins at cutting off this parasitic mess within the family. Everyone wants to sit here and we all want to make the world better and this and that. But it's just not designed that way. But everything that happens on purpose, especially big things. Now, the Matrix, of course, has to take into account our decision-making abilities, our free will, to some extent. Now, granted, it's very limited, and it's the most ridiculous thing to say that free will is limited, but it is. But it does also exist. And someone that grows up and witnesses an extreme tragedy like her son did, that's not easy. But it's all part and parcel for how this place works. It's like it continues the lineage, right? If you don't know any better, if you don't know how this place functions, how it gets its rocks off, and how it's targeted to make your life or your family's life difficult or miserable, then you don't know any better. So it really starts with us on a level with the family and spreading awareness, spreading mindfulness, spreading how to meditate in general. I mean, small things. Hypnotic tracks. I mean, that are, you vet and make sure are correct and not trying to target an individual. I mean, there's so many different things that can be done, but until we cut off the parasite within our lineage, because remember, everything is learned especially from birth to age 7. Everything is like a sponge. It's proven. It's a fact. It's not, I'm not just saying this to build up ego or brownie points. It's a fact. You can go look it up that from birth to age 7, we are in different brainwave states. It's mostly birth to age 6, but you can kind of reach the outer layers of all that. And we're going to get into that in the next members stream. But anyways, don't allow yourself to just throw away the importance of intergenerational trauma, intergenerational indoctrination, and how this continues to play a role within our family. And the best thing we can do is sit back and try to make the best adjustments possible. If not, remove our loved ones from the negativity, like the Wi-Fi signals or the cell phone addictions and all that stuff. And I think we're all kind of having issues with technology, right? But I'll take a poll. I'm actually going to put a poll up there. I'd like to see the response, and let's just be honest with each other. Technology can be so helpful, but it can also be detrimental. Let's see what happens.
had alcohol poisoning to the point he's hospitalized, and drug addiction and all these things. And to see him today, God made that transformation, and he knows that. And it's so beautiful. And for those who have children that are way out there, what better example to them to have a parent that is a God-loving person. And you can keep praying for those kids. I sure did. I had to finally tell my son, please don't call me or be around me if you're going to be drinking or on drugs. I can't take it. You're hurting me too much. And so he wouldn't. And we went through a lot of years of real pain, but never gave up on him, never once, and loved him unconditionally through the whole thing, but could not stand to have him to see it. So he was gracious enough to at least do that. But he's such a great guy now, such a great guy. We're real buddies because we've been through this together.
Right. Because you've grown and expanded that path together.
Yeah.
And that's a good point, though, that I think a lot of people go through. Like they love at that level, but the person may not be in a state where it's healthy to be around them. And I think your message is very important, that that's okay. You can still love and support them, but you don't have to support the behaviors.
Absolutely.
Or be involved with that. But can you just explain? I mean, I bet you that, especially as a mother, was really hard for you. Like, can you just talk about that a little bit?
Well, I had lost one son already. And so to lose this other son was absolutely horrible. I mean, we had to ask him to leave our home because he was so destructive, self-destructive, and anyways, destructive to friends and neighbors and people. So we put a list down. Chris, this is what is our home. We love you and we want you here, but you cannot do these things and live here and do drugs and alcohol and blah, blah, blah. And gave him the list. And he said, you're either going to live by this list or leave. And he said, well, I'm going to leave. So he left. And as he walked out the door and up the hill, my heart broke once again, like he had died. And that went on for a year or so. And people would come and throw his stuff in our yard and say, your son is blah, blah, blah. And we said, yeah, we know. And give him his stuff and off he'd go again. And anyway, he came back in about a year and said, okay, well, I'm ready to follow the rules. I'd like to go into the Navy, and they have a program where you can have help if you're on drugs. And he went in, and the only help they gave him was pulling him out of line and testing him. And, so it was tough for him, I'm sure. But he did come out of that still with alcohol and drug problems somewhat, but a better man. And pretty soon, I don't know how he did it, but he got off the drugs and the alcohol, and he still was. And then he was still in the biker clubs, but he changed from that into a Christian biker club. He found a church, Tribe of Judah, and they changed him. They brought him to Christ, and not me. And it was wonderful. And so now he's reaching out.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Back home, I was involved with Bikers for Christ, and they do amazing things,
Yeah.
And so that's really, really cool that he is able, to be that person in that community for them, and, and just speak the will of God.
Yeah.
My friend likes to say, wield the will that is holy. And I think when you speak these messages of transformation, it gives that hope that that's available for everyone. I mean, I think that's a very good message that you keep saying, that you can find this too, if you just see and feel and search. Because like you said, you when you first came back from your near-death experience, that you searched through a lot of scripture, right? And were there various religions that you looked through, or was it mostly just through the Christian literature?
I went right back to Christian. I had searched all the religions before,
really?
And I never really found anything that really resonated. And of course, Christianity didn't either. But because that's what I probably knew best, that's where I was drawn. And then I was drawn into further teachings and better teachings and knowing more. But when I first picked up the Bible, it was like Greek to me. I thought, why'd they write a New Testament? Wasn't the Old Testament good enough? And what are all these numbers about? And it was just crazy. But I kept trying to read it, but I learned how to read it. I mean, there's a way to read the Bible. It's picking up as an atheist. And opening it up was like, nope, I don't understand any of this. So, but in going to these other churches where they taught from the Bible, then I was able to see how the Word of God could speak to you. And I learned to do that myself pretty soon. And now that's where I go. If I got a problem or an issue, it's there. The answer's there. And so it was a process.
Yeah, and some say that's like divine bibliomancy, where you open it up and you're given exactly what you need. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. And do you find that with the scriptures, I'm just curious because, you said you study them. Like, to me, they're more like a spiritual analogy or a metaphorical. In like, if you take it too literal, you're missing like the whole energy behind it.
And
how do you see it?
We find a great deal of issues and problems in faith-based things because of that, because of people's or human interpretation of the scriptures. And I don't care how high up someone is in the faith, the Christian faith, they still are interpreting it from what they've been taught or what they really feel, and that may not be right for you. And so I question a lot of the stuff in Christianity. I really do. And I pray to God to help me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to, and I don't really speak out a lot about that, but I do feel that you really need to read the Bible and read scripture as asking God to reveal to you what's needed in you. And, is Jesus Christ the only way to come to heaven, to get to heaven, which Christianity teaches? This is what I have a problem with that so much. So then I say, well, who is Jesus Christ? Who is he? Well, he's the Son of God. Okay, I can believe that. And he came here to earth to help us to cleanse us from our sins. I can believe that too. Who else would go through what he went through? Unless he was a total nutcase, and he wasn't. He was.
Probably was. Welcome to the Matrix, where anything is possible. I don't know. Who knows? It's a Matrix reinforcement officer. The Jesus narrative is big, massive, and it's just one of many.
And so, these things I see, well, could Jesus Christ, could he really be something else? Could Jesus Christ, be somewhere else for somebody else? And I kind of believe that. And so anyway, there's a lot that goes into your understanding of scripture. And like I say, I keep around me there's probably 3 people that I really trust in the faith. And so I don't get off base.
Right. And I just thought that's why I wanted to bring it up to you, because there is so much taught that is like what I call like Christian literalism.
Yeah.
And for me, when I say to feel divine, you have to feel. It's a matter of feeling. It's not an intellectual thing.
Yeah.
It's like, get out of your own head and feel what that feels like. To me, when I had my experience, they told me like, it's like, I call it light code, but like, how like there's the Da Vinci Code, there's a divine code in all of those writings that like, if you feel into it, you will see and know the word of God, Right. And so I think that's so important because so many people are searching for a path, like what's right for them. And I think that's an intuitive knowing, like you were just saying, like, feel it. And we've all searched different paths. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because when I look through the ones that I have seen, you can see the divine throwing through all of it. There's so many similarities, just said in different words, in different time periods, different things, and if I'm a creation, and like I call Jesus Yeshua, but as far as he says, you are my brothers and sisters, correct? So therefore, it flows through all these religions, all these places in time. It's feeling that divinity in the flow, so to speak, for me. And I just didn't know, I'm glad you talked about that, because sometimes when near-death experiencers say God, people get that whole breakdown of what, like, either Christian God or different gods. And I just feel it's important to say what you were saying, like, feel it out. It's not as literal as that. Or
why isn't it? Why isn't it? Something this big, something this massive should have a definitive freaking answer. But she's right. Because what this matrix does is cherry pick and assign certain belief systems depending on what you grew up in, your geographical location, etc., etc. All these things play a major role. So the question is why isn't there a definitive answer? Why do individuals experience things differently, but with almost textbook patterns? It's a really, it's a double-edged sword, because it really does expose itself, but at the same time, you can see the genius of it. You can see how easy it is for us to fall into these traps. And so, yeah, it's crazy. We do have a little bit more to go. It's not going to be, the third segment isn't going to be extremely long, but just want to let y'all know we're going to take about a 5-minute break and come back. So hang in there with me, my friends, and we will see each other in about 5-6 minutes tops, probably less. So see you shortly. Welcome back, my friends. Thank you so much for chilling. All right, so we are going to move along into the last segment of tonight's stream. And before we do that, I'm going to close the poll on all the platforms. And just as a reminder, we're on YouTube, Odysee, Twitch, and Rumble. So, all right. Let's see what we got here. So, got YouTube is closed. We've got Odysee. Nobody on Rumble. And let's see. Nobody on Twitch. Okay. So it's basically Odysee and YouTube, which is great. My two at least favorite platforms in terms of what's available. So let's see. We've got okay. All right. Sorry, I'm just trying to combine here. Okay. All right. So are you addicted to technology? Examples could be phones, PC, TV, etc. Yes, we had 47%. No, we had about 29, 30%, somewhere around there. And then maybe it was 23%. So, technology is a weird thing, right? I mean, I know I wouldn't be where I am today without technology. So, there's a lot of benefits to it, but at the same time, sometimes I realize my addiction to it. So I'll openly admit that, and something I need to work on. I thought about I started looking up not that long ago is that there's these cell phones that they'll rewind back time where they, there's no, they're just like a cell phone number, a text messenger, and that's it. I mean, very, very simple stuff. Minimalize type of thinking, type of phone, but they're out there. So there are options. And then there's a lot of interesting YouTube channels out there, or Odysee channels too, where you see individuals taking extended breaks from technology, where they walk away for weeks, months, or even just a single week just to see what it feels like. And without a doubt, they all say there are benefits to doing so. So make of that what you will, but that's at least my observation. Perhaps you've run across different, but it seems that anyone who kind of takes a break from technology benefits. But there's also because of the dopamine releases with technology and the screen refresh rate, which has existed forever, but it's just gotten more and more refined. But that doesn't matter. It's the same manipulative bullshit that's out there. Point is, whether you realize it or not. Me personally, I realize my issues with it from time to time, and it needs improvement, if not complete eradication. So, anyways, sorry for the rant. And just as a reminder, before we're going into segment 3, this channel is for educational purposes only. And we are going to continue on. We've only got probably maybe another 20, 30 minutes at most. So let's roll.
you were saying, like, feel it out. It's not as literal as that, or a
Right.
one-way path. I mean, so when you talk about God, is that how you see it? Like that it's this all-encompassing being that we're a part of, no matter what paths we walk.
Right, pretty much so. Some of the things that I hear, because God is not the center of it, I don't believe in. But again, to each his own. I'm not going to judge anybody's faith in God or whatever. But if it isn't God centered, I have a problem with it. In some way, it has to be God centered. So
Yeah.
If it's not indoctrinational, if it's not indoctrinationally sound, then I've got a problem with it. This is what the Matrix done to poor Cat, but again, just opinions.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some where I've noticed it's like a breakdown of I call it the pantheon. Like it would be like some of them, they break it into different aspects of God. That's how I see it. Like, where there's like this God and then there's these gods, and that's
Right.
their whole belief. I think they're just looking at different aspects of the same divine being. They're just kind of breaking it into different personality complexes almost of the one divine, as far as those multi-godheads or things like that, because all of it is created by one, what I call prime creator,
Yeah.
And so religion is not a subject I ever get into, but I just wanted to point that out because so many, I feel, are conflicted about all of that or what it means to them. And I guess, my thing with it is that's part of your expansion. Whatever you're called to at the time, just let that divine flow through you and follow that, to see where it leads you to, because everything leads back to source, God, whatever term you want to use. We all use different terms, I think, and are saying or trying to say the same language of that divinity, so I was just really interested.
Here we go again with the assumptions that everything leads back to source or the creator. Or God. It's always this assumption. Why can't deception be the option? Why can't a trap be the option? When you live in duality as a human being and see duality front and center, despite individuals claiming up, down, left, and right that they are much more expanded and capable and this and that. And of course, we can go down the road of how some of them will say that they were all knowing, quote unquote, all knowing. And then when you start to listen to what they're saying, it's clear that they're not all knowing. And it's no fault of their own. Again, I'm not crapping on any experiencer at all. I'm just saying that it's a state of mind that the Matrix produces. And it's like, if you take the sovereign path, what can go wrong there? At least you've allowed yourself that opportunity. But if you don't allow yourself that opportunity, if we don't allow ourselves that opportunity as individuals, then perhaps there could be some fuckery about. Just saying, make of what you will.
In your theory, that people just look at it differently, but we're all connected in that same God source,
Pretty much so. I've heard people say that we are God. I don't believe that at all. God help us if that's true.
Right? I always say, like, if Jesus is the Son of God, he's a piece of God.
All right, before this part continues, can we just agree, based on the conversation at hand between the both of them, that they both don't know? they both don't know. Well, I hope this or I hope that, or, hopefully it's this way or maybe it's that way. Maybes or indecisiveness shouldn't even be at play. It should be definitive. Definitive. There should be no second guessing any of this. And that's another thing we do see pop up. It's like, what about all those who claim that they think that they know their mission, but then when they come back here, they open themselves up, share their experience, and we see them up front and center admitting that they have no freaking clue what their mission is, what their journey is supposed to entail. And then some of them will sit there and swear up, down, left, and right that, yes, they know what their mission is. But then when you rewind it a little bit and listen to their experience and how they got to that inner knowing, quote unquote, well, it becomes clear that they don't know. Or it's very, very small percentage. I mean, look, there's a lot of good that has come out of the near-death experiencer community. I'm not going to shit on any of that. I'm not. I mean, I've spoken with, this was a few years ago, I spoke with a man who had an incredible Jesus experience. The guy was loaded to the hills, multi-millionaire, all right? And he opened up food pantries and rehab facilities. I'm telling you, this guy went all out and did a lot of good. Now, can we all sit here and shit on that? Absolutely not. Look, if you're in the matrix and you're having trouble, it's good that there's at least someone out there that is going to try and help you. And if you're already lost in the sauce, so to say, then the chances of you maybe coming out of that may be even slimmer. Does that mean it's impossible? No way. But there is a lot of good that can come out. Like, there's another NDE. I mean, there's NDEs I talk to, they just don't want to come on and talk about their experience because it really is, my channel's a bit of a deterrent, right? But there's a number of NDEers who email me every once in a while and will say, look, I see what you're saying, but, I'm trying to walk the path and do this, this, and that. And these individuals exist where they are out there helping society. They are. They're actually putting everything into helping others. And that's awesome. I can't shit on that. Nobody should shit on that. But in the same breath, it's like, well, where is that help reaching? How is this all kind of playing itself out? And like, if I had to take a wild guess, it's to suck in a certain segment of the population that may be overthinking themselves or maybe looking at things that they quote unquote shouldn't. Like the BS of this reality and so on, but who knows, right? I can't knock individuals who come back and actually walk the walk and help others. You just can't. I have a problem with blind belief, right? There's a difference between helping others get along or find a house or get food on the table or help children or whatever the case may be. There's a difference between that and kind of jamming the love and light down other individuals' throats. There's a big difference there. Now, does that mean those that walk into the situation who are hurting and maybe they get, a few months in an apartment or a hotel, or they get food delivered to them, or they get a wheelchair or a walker or a nurse's aide or something that actually does good? It doesn't matter in the end. It matters, of course, in the moment, but it doesn't matter in the end because the Matrix seems to think of everything in terms of it being able to extend out the puppet strings. Now, of course, as we talked about earlier, how much free will plays into all this, who knows? But I think it plays a big role because the Matrix has to expect that free will be utilized. Now, what level of lucidity that we each use that free will, now that's another story entirely. But perhaps there is, especially with those who go out and have the financial means to help others, who have had a profound near-death experience or a spiritually transformative experience, or you pick it, whatever the case may be. If like the money's out there and they're setting up and paying for food pantries and Lyft rides and apartment deposits and rent and all that stuff, that's great. There are many that need that, but perhaps the Matrix is zoning in on a geographical location and it knows maybe it's failing in those areas. I mean, I know this is out there. I'm not saying this is exactly what's happening because I have no freaking clue. But you have to kind of put your mindset in how a parasite would work, right? It's going to extend its dirty little claws out into the community in an effort to get the best result possible. So, anyways, kind of ranted there for a bit, but there's still a lot of good that comes out of everything, not just NDEs, but there's so many areas that can help individuals.
Our God. I don't believe that at all. God help us if that's true.
Right? I always say, if Jesus is the Son of God, and he's a piece of God, and if we're his brothers and sisters, but to me, it's that divine spark within you. So that's where some people say, we are all God, in that sense, because we carry that divine spark, but it doesn't mean we created everything and anything. You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah.
Because,
I just feel like Jesus Christ either is who he said he was, or he was the biggest fake and phony that was ever created, right?
Right. The snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean, and the things, and some of the studies I've had, where they're like, yes, they say, Jesus was a real person, but not everything attributed to him did he do. It was a collection of these very knowledgeable, wise men who created this whole thing. And still, that doesn't take away from it, like you were saying, because that's divine wisdom. It doesn't matter who carried it. We all carry some of it, I think, from our experiences and just being a part of that love. So I just found that really interesting that you had said that. So my other thing is, I was just curious, with everything that you do, what projects are you working on? I mean, what is it that drives you, through that experience and to get your message out there?
Well, I found one of the best ways to get the message out is what I'm doing right now, and that's these podcasts. So thank you very much for asking me. And I have done a lot of things, speaking for groups when I'm asked, and but it a lot of times I feel like I'm just preaching to the choir, because that people that would come to an event like that already don't need to, So amongst my friends, everybody knows what I'm all about. My golf friends they're wild and crazy. They're so much fun. But they call me the church lady, and I'm not, but when I miss a putt or something and I say a word I shouldn't say, they say, oh, the church lady. so I'm constantly under the eye. But getting God's word out the way that it's through these social media is huge, and such a blessing to be able to come on programs like this and tell my story. And I wrote my book to carry on when I'm not here. and my son, he's able to use it in his ministry as well. And so, it's just being who I am. And I think God brings people to us. I have people coming to me a lot because I am the church lady. Right. Yeah, they know I'm not. I mean, it's just a big joke. But, anyway, they do come to me when they're hurting and have questions, and they know they're safe with me, and that's huge. And my son's friends and my husband's friends, anywhere,
Yeah.
just in the grocery store, I have these feelings of people that you run into. Just, there's a reason why I just bumped into this lady and start talking with somebody, and boom.
Yeah, and one of the messages I got, I pray in that is that you're in the right space at the right time for souls. Yeah. Like I part of the reason and like the agreement to come back was to be that messenger. And I've noticed this. I mean, sometimes to the point of like, whoa, that's too crazy how that all lined up.
Agreement. Just saying, we're not going to go down the consent railroad tonight, but that's going to be coming in a future video for anyone who's questioning the consent factor. If you don't realize the power of your intention, then it's easy to dismiss how we can initially consent. Does that mean we didn't get tricked along the way once we came into the system? Those are two different issues. What are the agreements? What are the understandings about when we walked into this system initially and decided to be a leaf on a tree, or a frog, or an alligator, or a fish, or a bird, or a human, or a monkey? You pick it. I mean, we don't know. Does that mean I'm like shaming or crapping on anyone? No, it just means that, hey, I realize the power of intention. It's shown itself over and over and over and over again. And we should all take a lot of solace in that. And that's it. Does that mean that like I support the atrocities that goes on here? Because there's certain individuals that seem to feel that way. A number of individuals, and I'm not. Does that discount all of the other material presented on this channel, and that kind of show how powerful we are and that we're capable of incredible things? It shouldn't, but apparently it does. And it's all good. It happens because I don't care anymore, but we just gotta do what's best for us as individuals. Period. That's it. Everything is about individuality, intention, sovereignty, liberation, and not looking back and realizing where we can interact with this reality or realities linked to this, and how it's not in our best interest. That's all.
just there's a reason why I just bumped into this lady and start talking with somebody, and boom.
Yeah, and one of the messages I got, I prayed that is that you're in the right space at the right time for souls.
Yeah.
Like I part of the reason and like the agreement to come back was to be that messenger. And I've noticed this. I mean, sometimes to the point of like, whoa, that's too crazy how that all lined up. And now I had a laugh when you were saying that. My family's always like, there'll be people that'll just come up to me, and especially when the kids were little, they didn't get it. They're like, Mom, do you know that lady? Because I mean, like, they would literally just tell me their whole life story or whatever was on their mind that day. So when you came back from your experience, did you find that that was happening a lot? Like they were just drawn to you? Like
yeah, I mean, and I said that before, that we don't bring anybody to God. God sets the groundwork for us. So that's yes. I mean, He brings them to us, and you have to recognize those that He is bringing. But there are subtle signs that people are hurting, or they need a word or whatever. So yeah.
I would say like we're always that angel to someone else, from our experiences.
Yeah, the thought's always there. The thought's always there.
Yeah, to like, and that's the importance, I think, of sharing these stories. And like
angels declined.
Like you said, you wrote it, so it's always out there, and somebody can find it if it needs it. So you're still being the angel long after you're gone.
Right. So
and you're like giving that message back to the people, and that's so beautiful. Now I just want to touch base is like, from your experiences overall, the life you've lived and the experience after your experience, what would you say or want to say as your biggest like takeaway from that? Like what expanded you the most that you feel is a message that people need?
The realization that this world is bullshit.
That's hard to answer, because they need so much, but it depends on what they're looking for. I mean, if you have a strong faith in God and all, then you need to go to Him, not to me, but I think overall it is that there is hope. If you're in a position right now where you're hurting over the death of somebody, you're hurting over a diagnosis of cancer, you're hurting over a child that's gone astray, you're hurting over the death of a loved one, all these things that we all go through, they're overwhelming. So if you don't have something in your life, if you don't have God in your life, it makes it almost impossible. But the message I have is, I don't think there's one thing that God could throw my way, and I don't mean to tempt God, I don't want it anymore, but that you can't overcome or can't handle when you have God in your life. And I'm not saying that you just, okay, I believe in God. I'm talking about a daily walk with God where you can feel Him in your life. You can feel His direction. You feel the condemnation when you're doing wrong. You feel the elation when you're doing right.
You feel the bullshit just permeating everything. Sorry.
Be right with God. Be right. And that's what I tell a lot of my friends that are, get right with God and then enjoy your life.
Get right with bullshit.
Enjoy it. So
I call that being in the divine flow, like surrendering.
Being in the divine flow. I'm sorry.
To be a service, to me, it's like love or fear, or there's always that choice that you want to, which do you want to live in, as far as when you do everything from a place of love, I feel like abundance flows, like everything comes and you're in that, that divine space. It's a matter of like choosing where you want to be and what you want to be in the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not all about going to church every day. And it's not all about being in the Bible every day. It's all about relationship. It's not religion. It's relationship.
Yes.
So,
Beautiful. Yes. Yes. And having that relationship, because I feel when you have those loving relationships, you're being, you're personifying that same love. You're in
yes.
that space. Very beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
That is so true. That is so true. And I think that's just more what we have to keep in mind when we're connecting with other people. That old do unto others what you want unto you, because, ever since my experience, I see it in that what I call the 360 view. I see it how and where people are hurting and how they're presenting from that place of hurt and pain. I don't take it personally,
Right.
it's not directed at me. And like you said, a lot of them, and even in your time, directed at God, like, what God would do this, kind of thing, instead of looking in that accountability and responsibility of.
Instead of calling it out for what it is, which is one big giant BS fest. Excusing everything away. Cognitive dissonance at its finest. I mean, this is the problem with experiencers. No, I'm not crapping on any single experiencer, but this is where the rubber meets the road, right? I mean, we're talking with individuals who had a very powerful, amazing, and incredible experience. And in Kat's case, she had a life of horrors leading up to it. Absolute horrors. And so did her son, and it just passed down through generations, right? And it seems, he turned himself around and did what he needed to do, but, he didn't deserve that. Kat didn't deserve that. The family didn't deserve that. Any of this. But it breaks people. The trauma, the burdens, all this stuff is, you can't help but have empathy and compassion for what's going on. You can't help but, I know I'm sarcastic and stuff, but this is one little microcosm of a case in a much bigger story that exposes or helps expose the Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap. So, I don't know. When is enough enough? When do the excuses stop?
Hurt and pain. I don't take it personally, it's not directed at me. And like you said, a lot of them, and even in your time, directed at God, like, what God would do this, kind of thing, instead of looking in that accountability and responsibility of where your life got to this point. He's loved you through it all,
Right.
So I just think that's a beautiful message. So thank you. So I just want to say, is there anything else that your soul is calling to speak before we wrap this up today, as far as your feelings about all that you've experienced?
Well, I'm glad that I found God in my life. I'm so grateful, and I hope that even one person who is doubting right now could converse with us more if they want to, or will reach out at least to somebody and have that in their lives, and peace would come to all of you like it has to Lorelai and I myself. And this is a great way to live and a great way to die. So,
right, exactly. Just to be in that moment of that pure love is all of us hope for, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I thank you, Kat, so much for being here today and speaking your truth and just being out there, being authentic, and letting people feel what you felt. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so if you want to connect with Kat or read more of her story, it'll be down below in the description. We thank you again for joining us today at Spirit Insight. So much love to you.
Okay, so thank you for hanging in there with us and going through tonight's NDE. I want to give a shout out to the channel that hosted this interview. It's Spirit Insight. You could spell it out: Spirit, INSIGHT, and that's all one word. So Spirit Insight, and Insight is all one word. There are a few interviews on there if you're interested in checking them out. And okay, so I think we'll kind of leave it at that. I'm pretty tired. And perhaps we may see each other tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure on that, or Sunday, I guess tonight, the 12th, may have another go at it. But just as a reminder, next weekend, there will be no streams. I'll be away all weekend camping and on into the next week. And then, so the next likely stream will be either on the 24th or 25th, which is Friday or Saturday. And then the member stream will be on the 26th. So if you're a Last Timers Club member in the stream level, we will be meeting on the 26th of March 2023 at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And if things do change or are updated, I'll make sure to leave an update in the members community tab. Just as a reminder, I do have 2 YouTube backup channels. Feel free to subscribe and hit the bell. And if you're new here, feel free to also subscribe and hit the bell for all notifications if you want to be reminded of live streams, because the notification system sucks on YouTube, and some people get them, some don't. And the only solution I can kind of throw out there is to make sure that the bell is selected to all. When it's personalized, then it's kind of like a crapshoot. I also have a Twitch account where we're on tonight, so hello to everyone on Twitch. And I do mostly truth in gaming videos, so if you're into video games, and I'm telling you, it's very casual, chill. It's not, well thought out. I'm just playing video games, and occasionally I'll pop on mic and show if there's some truth bombs or something. So feel free to come over there, but just don't expect any sort of professional operation, because that's not what it's about. It's just kind of downtime, and occasionally there's truth bombs. I also have a Rumble. So hello to everyone on Rumble watching tonight. Hope you're doing well. And of course, Odysee. And memberships are available on Odysee and YouTube. But unfortunately, I don't have anything set up on Rumble yet. And those watching or listening on Odysee, there will be more videos coming out soon to finish off the upload of the backlog of members' videos over there. And with Odysee, if you're interested in subscribing or becoming a member there, I will, the plan is to provide more content there as a member, because there's just certain things I can't cover on YouTube. It has nothing to do with not wanting to. It's just like it's like every which way you turn on YouTube, like your back's against a wall, where you have to worry about this or worry about that. And so if you're interested in Odysee, I think they're working on a great platform, and they've shown over and over and over again that they don't mind investing in a platform, unlike garbage like BitChute that's been around forever, and they don't even have live streaming yet. Sometimes you can't even upload a video. I mean, I'm not joking. Like, have you ever tried to upload a video to BitChute? good luck. I mean, in Rumble's not new, but it's not old. And you would think that Rumble would start investing in the platform. The only one that's shown itself, at least in my eyes, and I could be wrong, I know some of you have been around these platforms longer than I have, certainly, but I see Odysee continually investing in their platform. And they update, they keep everyone in the loop about what's going on. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that, it's not going to be hijacked or taken over like other platforms, because, of course, these things can happen overnight. All it takes is selling a company. Or, perhaps many of these are compromised from the jump. That's some serious things to consider. But there's a difference between those platforms that continually show that they want to improve their platform and those that don't. And Odysee, in my opinion, is consistent. So feel free to check out the channel there. I also have a email list. Feel free to subscribe to that. To this date, it's been out there, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months, and I haven't sent an email out, but it's a good way for us to stay in touch just in the case something should happen and shit hits the fan. So feel free to subscribe there. I also have one-on-one sessions, and that link is available in the description. And I think that's it. So before we close things out, I want to give a big shout out to Conscious Soul, who's in the chat. And also Catherine, if you're listening tonight, I'm also wishing you the best on your journey. I know both of you aren't doing too well health-wise, and sending a little love and healing vibrations, healing energy, I guess you can say, their way is a good thing. Just even if you're thinking it, just send it out there. You never know when shit's gonna hit the fan for us all, right? As individuals, but we gotta look out for one another too. So, all right, falling asleep. So I will catch up with you all soon. Stay safe. Don't work too hard next week, and perhaps we will see each other tomorrow. So good night, YouTube. Good night, Odysee. Good night, Rumble, and good night, Twitch. We'll see each other soon. Thank you.